Welcome back to another episode of Tales of Agmar. Today, everybody, we are covering some exciting details involving Castiel's origin story. He's a little bit of a mystery and wildcard in universe, but I feel that makes him a more interesting character. So buckle up, get ready, and let's get going with this. But before I get too deep, I do need to talk about some short announcements. They'll be super fast. First off, if you haven't already, please subscribe or follow the cast. It takes about 2 seconds. It helps so much with getting this episode out to new people. And for those of you that already have, thank you so much. You guys have helped us out tons. Seen lots of new people kind of pop up here and there, and it's super exciting. Anyways, next, we of course have got the free Discord community and the Ko-fi tip jar. Those are just linked down in the show notes below. And feel free to check those out as well if you got time. The Discord, of course, is just where we can chat and hang out as a new and growing community. So thank you, and thank you for those that have checked it out already. Now, last update, book update. All right. As I talked about last week, I'm officially in the editing before the beta drop phase. I've been reviewing parts of the book and having some others do so as well, just to get different perspectives, kind of get feedback, when other people read it, because as an author, you can read your own work, and sometimes it's good, and you're just like, oh yeah, this is fantastic, and other times it's good, and you're like, oh, this is terrible. And then there's, of course, the third option where you think it's fantastic, it's actually terrible, and other people are like, yeah, you might want to reword all that because you sound weird here. So we're getting a mix of all of that, and I feel like it's going super good, and very, very soon, we'll probably add maybe another very in that. We'll see if I can actually get a date for this down for y'all. But I will be announcing the release of sections of the book on Royal Road. And so once that happens, I will put that link below in every episode. We'll put that above the Ko-fi and the Discord ones. That way you guys can easily find it. You can go there, start reading it, start digging in. Share the link with your friends. It'll be super exciting. Now, with all that out of the way, let's actually start talking about Castiel's origin story. So, he is an interesting oddity, to say the least. Just kind of how he fits in with some more of the actual story. Gander first meets him during year 2 of training on Ragash. All right, eventually he's recruited into Gander's squad during year 2. We kind of talked about that last time and a little bit through this origin story series. All right, but so during year 2, they're grouped into the squads, just in case you're new and this is the first episode you're listening to. And they train to become a specialists in their squad units, fostering more and better unit cohesion during that time, right? So this actually ended up causing some tension because Castiel was going to be a squad leader as well when this arrived, but Gander was like top of the top, really started getting to get like a very special treatment. And everyone kind of knew this, but a lot of people also respected Gander. Castiel, not so much. He felt like he was a lot better than Gander in numerous ways. And in the end, once he found out that Gander had picked him up, instead of being like, oh, that's kind of cool, sort of nice thing, like, humbling moment, he goes the opposite way. He's like, no, this is terrible. Now my shot at, being the lead is gone. It's over. And that starts a conflict, not to mention the fact that Gander continuously has Aster next to him, and Castiel is always chasing Aster. So that's kind of who he is in a nutshell, and kind of where he is once the book starts. Now, we're going to go into sort of what he, and again, this is origin story stuff. We're going to eventually have a book or small book series, different from the old ones, like a spinoff, that would then dive more into this. And so that's why he is a minor character. And this is because he plays a big role in the major characters' lives, that being Gander, Aster, and Mace, and Kandra, though he doesn't really play a big role in her life. So, anyways, for getting into the program, right, we know that Aster had to hack her way in. Gander earned his way in through school and eventually a challenge to get the prestige of entering into the training. But for our new character, Castiel here, he went a different route, and that was because he was able to. So, first, some more additional background. As with most sci-fi territories, the Ellonist Republic is constantly expanding, right? They're always growing, extending outreach to new planets, colonizing planets, terraforming planets, conquering planets, etc., etc. we've talked about before where they're stuck holding planets away from hostile rebel forces, and that is what they spend a lot of their time doing. So this means, right, if they're constantly expanding, some parts are going to be more disputed than others, like we were just talking about. But we also have worlds that are very close to the Ellonist state's capital planet, that being Ellon. So, quick tidbit on Ellon here, because I was looking back through my notes and I don't really believe I've talked much about what that planet looks like. It's not your typical capital planet where it's covered in a whole city, right? They've got lots of cities, lots of very big cities, people densely packed into said cities. That, right, so these mega cities, they house like millions of residents, right? You've got military depots in there, recruiting offices, etc. They're going to pull a lot of Marines from the core planets. They're not going to be pulling any expeditionaries, because the closer you are to Ellon, the higher your rank is automatically, kind of a thing, right? So the lowest rank, especially on Ellon, you have to be at least a class 3 citizen to walk on Ellon. So if you're a class 4 or 5 or even a class 0 citizen, you're never going to see Ellon. If you become one of those all of a sudden, you're getting shipped right off of the capital planet. And that means it's a pretty nice planet, right? They've still got grass and trees, lots of places to explore. Ellon itself has a very high population, that being probably like 1% of the entire population of the Ellonist Republic is like class 1 citizens. They have got tons of class 2 people coming and going all the time and actually living there. And then they even have some families that are all class 2, including the kids, just because they're sort of, I wouldn't call them like the nobility, but it's just their families have been with the Ellonist Republic for so long. The kids are indoctrinated so hard, and can, thanks to the culture of the Ellonist Republic, turn into fantastic military and political leaders. There we go. I almost forgot what that was. But, right, that's who really ends up here. And then, we still got our huge group of our class 3s, but, they're not totally worried. You also have a lot of robot servants here. That's an interesting thing within the Ellonist Republic. I've talked very briefly about robotics within the Republic, but they use a heavy amount of like drones, not quite androids, but like robot droids, in the sense of like for simple labor tasks like mining or farming, there's going to be robots. We've got combat models of robots too, namely the scout unit, which just specializes in scouting out hostile environments and works kind of like a drone on foot sort of a thing. It doesn't really engage targets unless given permission to do so. But that was talked about way back in one of the Ellonist casts, so I won't cover that too heavily. If you're super interested, just run back in the catalog here and find the Ellonist Republic, and then there's like usually an extra little title about what it talks about specifically here, and you'll learn a little bit more about the robotics. Now that I think about it, we might run back, and I might just go into bigger detail about robotics too. So, anyways, let's get back onto Castiel's story. I will get distracted way too easily if I let myself, so bear with me. Now, Ellon's moon. This is a big part here, right? So we just talked about Ellon, it's super big, capital planet. Ellon's moon is actually where Castiel grew up, okay? This was the first planet that, planetoid, celestial object that was colonized by the Ellonist Republic itself. Once they broke free and really started actually colonizing, not just exploring space, their moon was first, which is very typical in sci-fi, I would say. And so it just made sense to do that, because that makes sense that your first permanent stuff is going to be on your moon, right? Whether that's initially used as sort of launch site for deeper explorations, like Ellon's moon was, or if it's turned into kind of just a place where you start offloading excess population until you can support it on your main planet, right? Anyways, this is where he grew up, spent a lot of his younger years here. They've got domes, like habitat domes, that kind of thing, but they're very big habitat domes. They've got their own ecosystems in them, their own little cities, and he spent his time in one of these. So these cities at this point are very, very akin to the ones that are on Ellon itself. They've also got millions of residents and infrastructure to support them. robots harvesting food here because we're not going to let any of those lower class citizens come anywhere near our crown jewels, in a sense, of the Republic. So he is a class 2 citizen, right? As was kind of alluded to before. This allows Castiel to choose sort of any path he wants, right? Because they're like, oh, you spent your time with the best instructors at the best schools, you've had the best training, you are a lot better than people that are, just a segment forward, which is kind of where Gander was, where he was, still very good, lots of class 3 people, but he, maybe didn't have access to like, the top general that's like a class 2 guy. So there's a little bit of prestige prejudice, you could say, going on with inside the Ellonist Republic, if that's the word. If someone can find a word that explains that, that'd be very helpful. You can just drop that as a comment below. But, right, he ends up choosing, obviously, the path of being an ace specialist. So naturally, he's going to get sent off to Ragash to go do that. He doesn't have to participate in the kind of trials that Gander did. He just runs through school and gets sent there. So there's a lot of people on Ragash that are training for aces that kind of just come from these core worlds, in a sense, if we're going to call them core worlds. I will get a better definition for them at some point, because I feel like calling them core worlds doesn't make sense, because spoiler, Ellon is not near the core of the Tales of Agmar galaxy. All right, it's actually, if it's like a spiral galaxy, I'll drop a map later of it at some point in the future. But if we were to have like a spiral galaxy, right, it's not quite on like the furthest edges of one of its arms, but it isn't anywhere close to the core. So it's kind of like in a middle area, which I feel like is interesting, because I feel like a lot of people, they just sort of plop their thing down and like, oh, like this core planet is right next to the core, and now that's like the center of the galaxy. And so navigating from Ellon is very interesting, because you're not navigating from the galactic center. You're sort of like approximating to the galactic center and then going out from like where you are from Ellon with that. Anyways, we've talked a lot about where Castiel is from, where he's going. Let's kind of dive into what his life looks like, okay? Or looked like before Ragash, because we kind of already know what happens on Ragash, right? They just do a whole bunch of training. The training sequences will be very cool, right? They do a lot of practical combat experience. But before that, what was Castiel doing on Ellon's moon? All right, he was doing rich kid things, basically, for lack of a better term. Right? He's sitting there. He's going to school. He was a very good student. He was not a bad student. Very prideful student for sure, but guy knew a lot. He knows a lot. He does a lot of good things. He ends up getting very good at sniping, right? Which I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, like this person is good at sniping in my thing, but like, I'm not talking about he's good at sniping where he's like good at trick shots, good at this. I'm talking like he's good at sniping because he can actually keep his hands steady. Okay, he is sort of, we play games and we like, the character will like hold their breath, right? And that would help steady your sniping scope if you've played games like that. He can do that and do that for a very long time once he gets into the mindset. So he's like actually good at sniping in the sense of like he's going to be patient, right? That sniping's about the only time that he's patient in the world. And he can actually sit there and focus in on a target and then take him out, right? He's got a very steady hand. He's very good with determining wind direction, that kind of thing, right? So when he's getting in the mode of sniping, he's actually going to be helping you snipe. He isn't just performing trick shots and isn't, prideful for no reason. Just to sort of set that out of the way, make him a little bit different than the standard, like, oh, I'm good at sniping character. Now, his family, right? What were they doing? What was so important? What guys? His dad is one of the best generals of the Ellonist Republic. He is actually the one that really pushed for having the ACE program become more fleshed out, have it be a place specifically on Ragash that churns out these new specialist soldiers, which can take care of the more nitty-gritty things that Republic officials are always needing to take care of. Just when you're dealing with insurrectionists, you can't always just keep fighting them because then they will get more momentum. You just got to take out the people that are actually leading the operation. You got to sever their own supply lines, as fragile as they are, because if they're unsupplied, they're eventually going to break. And that is what his father hoped the ACEs, or the ACE program, would do. And obviously, if you're surrounded by, a parent's dream, in some cases, you're going to pick that up. And so, Castiel here, I almost called him Gander. Castiel here picked up on that and was like, okay, I want to sort of follow in his father's footsteps, in a sense, of becoming an ACE specialist, becoming that kind of high-level operator to exact the will of the Republic. Just as a person, Castiel's personality is almost just the Ellonist Republic. He very much believes in the Citizen Index, that it does bring the order that really helps humanity survive in the stars. He believes that the Republic is right in taking out, millions, possibly billions of people a year across planets to maybe not quite billions now that I think about it, because a billion's a lot. It could get to a billion every year, though, but millions of people, and just carpet bombing planets to stop insurrectionists from coming closer in, right? He's very much pro sort of center of the Republic. Like, the center of the Republic is how the rest of the Republic should look in the future if we succeed today. And so that, and just while I've been experimenting, it breeds kind of an interesting person, right? So if you were to look sort of at a morals perspective, I guess, or like an alignment thing, right? If we go into D&D alignment sort of thing, where you've got like good, evil, chaotic, neutral, lawful, that kind of thing, he is very much just like a lawful character, almost. If that, I guess that'd be like lawful neutral kind of a thing, right? So he is just so involved in just like the Republic is a good place and it needs to be upheld. While Gander is more of like a lawful good, in the sense where he's like, I believe that all humans are created equal, and like there are some necessary evils like the Citizen Index. Aster, we're going to run a little bit on more of a just good kind of thing, right? She wants to be a good person. She's probably more of like a chaotic good, I would say, because she is just like, I will do anything to fulfill my good desires, which at the beginning of the book is very much centered around Gander. Gander kind of becomes her world. And I know this was supposed to be a Castile episode, but it kind of just turned into a Gander and Aster episode, which is at the end very fitting, because that's what happens to Castiel. At the end of the day, he was pumped up to be this big thing, and he's not. That's sort of where his fall begins. Is he was told his entire life, like, oh, you're going to be fantastic, the ACE program's perfect for you, you're going to be a leader, etc., etc., and he doesn't become that. Instead, Gander gets all of this. Gander gets the leadership position. Gander gets the girl. Gander gets all of the ranks, promotions. Gander gets all the congratulations on the ship. It's never Castiel. Everyone's always like, oh yeah, good job helping out helping out Gander, Castiel. That was like, did you see what he did back there? That was such a cool move. Or, oh, like, can you believe that he saved all those non-combatants? While Castiel is like, we could have gone without saving the non-combatants, and we would have lost less of our troops. We could have finished this whole thing sooner had Gander not taken on his, oh, I have to be a hero mentality. He's like, I could have had Aster, though in all honesty, he could not have had Aster. He kind of approaches that whole situation the wrong way. But right in his head, he's like, I could have had Aster if Gander had never shown up. So, and sort of and you'll see it when you start reading the beginning part of the book, is Castiel holds this immense anger towards Gander. He is very much just like, no, like, Gander is not, like, there's no way Gander could be who everyone says he is. There's no way that Gander is who he says he is. He's just this entity that is in my way of the life that I've dreamed that I've always had, of this my purpose in the galaxy kind of a thing. So that's a dive into, well, a tidbit dive, I guess I could call it, into like who he is, his origin story. And yeah, thanks so much for listening to the end, everyone. Next week I'll be covering bits of Horndal and his origin story. It'll probably be very much the same just because he's like a minor character. And it's like all these minor characters, they come from very interesting kind of different backgrounds and have a lot of secrets that the main characters have to uncover. And for you guys as readers to kind of be on the same page as the main characters, because I feel like that's usually the best way to do book reading. It gives room for a lot of surprises and whatnot. Then I'm giving you guys very much like what the main characters kind of see of these people once the book gets rolling. So anyways, right, we'll be talking about Horndal next week. The week after that, we're going to talk about Klep. Klep is a big role in Kandra's life, as you will see in the book. Very, very big. It's super important that we know a little bit more about him. But yeah, after that, we will be done with all the major and minor characters for Tales of Agmar Gambit. And I'll put this out here in hopes that it happens, but hopefully by then I will have a very good update on what it's looking like for the book. Anyways, I'm super excited for how close we are to getting to see this adventure really start to unfold for y'all, and I'm so grateful for all of you that joined this journey thus far. And with that, wherever you are, be a good one.